again, you can turn there. If you have trouble finding the book of Psalms, it is in the middle of the Bible. You open up, you're in Psalm 139, and that'll be the text that I talk about. And you can read from your own Bibles, mark it up, highlight it, that kind of thing. Any text, and I don't have a lot that we're going to talk about apart from that, will of course show up on the screen. But I looked at this psalm this week, and again, I just want to say I picked it because it says, "You knit me together in my mother's womb." And I just love that idea that God has worked in partnership with moms to like bring us into his creation. He's got a plan for us, and such a great idea. As I got into the psalm, I saw it was really about God knowing us and relationship. And I began to think maybe as a society we might struggle with the idea of being really genuinely known, like a mother might know her child. And I started to think, because the psalm is so much about God knowing us, God caring about us, God creating us, like because that's what the psalm is about, I began to wonder, like, why is it that our generation, our culture has such a trouble with letting ourselves be vulnerable to be known by people? And it all came to me as I was sitting at a local coffee shop, right? And I was sitting there getting ready to start writing this sermon, and I realized I had been in this coffee shop for at least 30 minutes, and I hadn't talked to anyone, right? In fact, like I ordered my sandwich and my coffee from my app on my phone. So I didn't have to even talk to anybody to order it. I didn't have to talk to anybody to pay for it. And so there I am with my overly like sweet chocolate coffee and my vegan sausage sandwich, which wasn't really very good anyway. But I'm sitting there and I realize I have not talked to anyone since I entered this building. And I know I wasn't alone in that, because everybody inside that coffee shop was on their phones or on their computers. And although they were all in the same room, they weren't really in the same room. They're in these digital spaces that have made relationship and community kind of break down a little bit. Now, before you guys think I'm just trying to like bag on these digital communities, I'm not. I think there's some value and some good things that happen in them. But I think one of the negative side effects is we've kind of grown accustomed to not having to interact with other people, right? How many people check yourself out of the grocery store? I love it, right? I do it all the time. Or like now you can just have food delivered to your house. How great is that? And they just knock on the door and walk away. You don't have to talk to anybody when you order the food. You don't have to talk to anybody when you pay for the food. And then you don't have to talk to anybody who shows up. All this is to say that is that we've kind of created a culture that has a hard time with face-to-face conversations and relationship, right? Like we do put ourselves out there maybe in some digital spaces like, I don't know, Facebook, Instagram, things like that. But even then, we're just putting a portion of ourselves that we want other people to see, right? Not the deep, deep stuff that we want to hide from people. That's the kind of stuff we keep off of Facebook, right? We put on Facebook the picture that it took 100 times to take, and it's gone through a couple filters, and we present ourselves to the world as this is us, this is me, and it's really just not, right? So we live in this society that although with all the benefits of these things, there's some cons. It's brought a little bit of disconnect with people, right? It's hard to get to know people. And more than that, like you really see it in the younger generations. They have social anxiety. They hide from people a little bit because they're so used to and accustomed to being separate, to being more alone. But you know, there's a relationship that no matter how digital our culture gets, you can't hide from. It's the relationship with your mom, right? There is no hiding from that relationship with your mom. Your mom knows you. She knows you in and out, and she knows all about you, right? Now that knowledge will fade in time. There's distance that happens as kids grow up. But moms are the ones that really know their kids and begin to understand them. And I saw that this week too, because I was in the youth center with some teens, and Jordan was there with little Jackson, who's, going on 6 months old now. Super cute baby. Bianca was holding him, and we're all talking, and all of a sudden Jackson's eyes got real big, right? And his face turned bright red. And Bianca thought, oh no, he must be choking, right? Jordan wasn't worried at all, right? She's the mom. She knows that look. How many moms in here? Do you know the look? Right? Like we all know that choking isn't the problem. Getting it out, not the problem, right? So what I'm saying here is like mom really knows, right? And then Bianca just handed the baby off, right? Because it's mom's responsibility to clean up the mess too, right? And isn't it amazing that even after that, right? Even after that, mom still loves. Like even she's cleaned up the mess, seen the worst of you, mom still loves. Right? I see that with my own kids because my wife's back there and we have 2 teenagers. And as they've grown older, they don't become less stinky and they don't cry as much, maybe. But there's still like these issues that they go through that moms know, right? Oh, they're still stinky. Thanks for that, January. The moms know, right? It's different issues. Now it's like sports issues, girlfriend issues, things like that, depending on the age. And we laugh about January because she has this like mommy sense, kind of like a spider sense to her, like something. I don't know. I don't know how she does it, but like just seeing the kids and how they stand or the way they're looking, she's like, Michael, something's the matter. You need to go talk to the kids. And then what do you think I do? I ignore her. I'm like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. She's right. Like 10% of the time, like 10 times out of 10, January's right. Something's the matter with the kids, right? Because moms know. That is one relationship, no matter how digital we get, that is one relationship that you can't hide yourself from. They truly know who you are, and they love you anyways, in spite of. And so I was thinking through that because the theme of the psalm is that God knows us, right? I mean, it has more to it. He wants to search us and know us completely. But we're so easily hiding and running away from those relationships because we're afraid to be vulnerable, to be really known. And I would like to suggest that maybe if we've been known by our mothers, we should be comfortable with being known by God, right? Because that's a good example of what it is to be known by God. Somebody who's seen all of it, like from diaper to going off to college. She has seen it all. She is, but she loves her kid anyway. And if that's kind of relationship that God wants with us, and I think that there's precedent. Even Ken pointed out that this morning, but I want to read from Isaiah chapter 49, verse 14, because I think there's times in the Bible where Scripture points to a motherly like aspect to God, like He mirrors this, and in Isaiah chapter 49, verse 14, it talks about this. It says, but Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me, the Lord has forgotten me. Now, of course, these people are off into exile, and they're thinking God has forgot about us. But verse 15, and I don't know if I put 15 in there, so just put it in there, Kathy. It says, can a mother forget a baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Right? The point is these people were feeling as if God had abandoned them. God had forgotten them. And God says it's nearly impossible for God to forget His children. Almost isn't like it is impossible for God to forget his children, just as it's nearly impossible for a mom to forget, right? Can she forget the child that is at her breast? No, she can't. It's her child. She loves her child. She knows her child. She loves her child. There's nothing she wouldn't do for her child, right? That is a mother. And so it's appropriate that we celebrate Mother's Day, correct? Right? Because moms love us and know us in a way that is just beyond our imagination. And I think we'll see, I guess the idea here is that seen in a mother's love is the kind of relationship that God wants to have with us, right? Like the way that a mother knows and loves and pursues and cares about her kid mirrors, sometimes falls desperately short, but mirrors the kind of relationship that God has with us. And so that's shown in Psalm 139. And I'm just going to read the first 6 verses to just show like the idea that God knows us. And that's my first point, of course, is that we are known by God. And remember, we're looking at the theme of mothers. So as a mother knows her child, we are known by God. And let's read it. In Psalm 139, this is a Psalm of David, first 6 verses, it says, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You're familiar with all of my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain." That's the opening idea. And it's the point I'm making is that as a mother knows her child, God knows us. The word know is used several times just in the first part, right? You've searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. And I just want to kind of key in a little bit on that word for know, because it's not like this abstract knowledge. God really knows us more than, a text message could describe. God knows us intimately, right? He really honestly knows us in a way that is reminiscent of a mother's love. I want to read a Irma Bombeck quote where she says this, it's not until you become a mother that your judgment slowly turns to compassion and understanding. That's it. When you become a mother, all that judgment you had turns to compassion and understanding. The more you know your child and you love your child, like it's really hard to be too judgmental. Like obviously there's good judgment. It's too hard to your judgment turns to compassion, understanding. I know you. I love you. And that's the kind of relationship God wants with us. Like a mother who knows her child, God knows us in an omniscient type of way. So like the text starts out by asking God to search and to know. And of course, God is omniscient. He knows everything already, but sometimes he does test us, right? Sometimes he does, like Abraham. He sent Abraham up the mountain to prepare a sacrifice, and he was going to have to sacrifice his own son Isaac. And then God said, "Stop. Don't hurt the child. Now I know that you fear the Lord," right? So there are times, although God is all-knowing, that he searches us out. He tests us to make sure not only that he knows, but also that we know what we're capable of. I think of moms, and they do the same thing. They search their kids. They test their kids. How many, like if you were a mom that first 3 months, was it easy? No, you're trying to figure out your kids. You're trying to learn the difference between the "I'm hungry" cry and the "I'm tired" cry and the "I'm teething" cry. And then you have to learn how to interact with each of those. Like, what do I do about those things? And the only way you come to the knowledge of your children is when you test and when you search. God doesn't have to do that. He's omniscient. He doesn't have he knows us completely. The way that this psalm does describe this is by doing two poetic opposites followed by a main idea. So here you go, verse 2. You know where I sit and where I rise. That's the idea. When you sit down and when you rise up. The point of the two opposites is to show that God knows from the beginning to the end and then everything in between. God doesn't only know when you sit and when you rise, but he knows everything that happened in between. So it'll give you a concluding statement where it says, you perceive my thoughts from afar. That's the kind of knowledge that God has for us. He knows us completely. He knows when we sit, when we rise, and he knows what went into the thoughts. The next verse says, you discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. That's the kind of knowledge that God has. From when I rise to when I fall, when I'm going out, when I'm staying in, God knows my thoughts. He's familiar with all my ways. Now, I think when I started to question the kids about this kind of knowledge, because we were talking about this today, their reaction was fear. Maybe wanting to flee. You could feel comforted. Hopefully at this point you're feeling comforted with a God that knows you so completely. But comfort isn't always the first feeling that comes in everybody's consciousness whenever they start to think of God truly knowing them. Some people want to run away from it. To be known so completely, that's might be a little bit scary. So we'll talk about that in a second, but I don't know. I think it's, if you've experienced a mother's love, who's seen all your flaws and cares about you anyway, loves you anyway, then this idea of being known being vulnerable shouldn't give us a reason to hide, but a reason to take comfort because God truly knows us, right? There's something moms wish they could do. Sometimes I think moms think they can do, but they really can't. This is something that's only for God. Look at verse 5 or 4. It says, "Your word, before a word is on my tongue, the Lord knows it completely." God knows what you're about to say before you've even had a chance to say it. How many moms wish they had that superpower? Right? Like sometimes I'm not going to say who, but I think she thinks she knows that she knows what their kids are going to say before they actually say it. And most of the time she's right, so maybe she does have that superpower. My mom wishes that she would have had this superpower because I'm a child of the 80s, right? And Madonna was big in the 80s. Do you guys remember that? In 1984, she came out with the song Like a Virgin. You guys remember that? Right? Now, my mom blames this on me, but I was a 4-year-old child at this point. So if I knew this song, it's only because she played it over and over and over and over and over again, right? And she must have been okay with that. But one day we were inside the gas station and my mom had left me to just look through all the candy. And all of a sudden, as loud as I could sing it, I started singing Madonna's Like a Virgin right there in the gas station, right? My mom was humiliated. She came running into that candy aisle. If my mom would have known the words that were on my tongue before I even said them, she would have stopped that one, right? But that's something that's special for God. God knows us so well. It may make you afraid. It may make you want to run, but it should be a source of comfort. God knows you because the text goes on to say that he wants to hem us in, right? Verse 5, you hem me behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Like, again, the opposites aren't just saying that God protects our front and our back, behind and before, but it's meant to show that he completely surrounds us, that he completely protects us. And I label this not as a thing that a mom can do, but a thing a mom wishes she could do, is protect her child all the time. But she can't, right? I mean, my son's getting older. He's going to be graduating in next year, and he's planning on going to college, and he's wondering what kind of RV mom and dad are going to get to follow him there, right? And there's a good chance that that's exactly what's going to happen. We are going to follow him there, right? No, we're not really, but he thinks we might, so maybe we will. But, well, that's my plan for him, right? I want to keep him close. I want to hem him in behind and before, so, WNC is where I want him to go. He doesn't want to go there. He wants to go to Florida if he can. Wait, getting back on track. We would love to follow him because wouldn't it be great to just, protect? A mom wants to protect her kids. A mom wants to hem them in behind and before and protect them with their hands. But she can't because we may, follow Isaiah off, but that would leave our other son here. And see, unlike God, we're not omnipresent, right? God can protect him while he's there and while my other son is here and when we're not around. And I think for a mom, if you're going to put this in a category, the category is this is something I got to turn over to God. I can protect my child when they're babies, when they're learning to walk, when they're potty training, when they're lost in a store. I could try to protect them. But kids grow up. Can't protect them forever. And you have a God who hems them in behind and before, who holds his hand over them. Like that's the kind of God that we have, a God that really knows you. And moving it away from the mommy metaphor, how great is it to know that God loves you that much that he's protecting you in that way? That he is hemming you in. His right hand is guiding you. If you're struggling for words on how that might make you feel, look at how it makes David feel in verse 6. He says, such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty to attain. That's how David feels about it. He's realized that God knows everything about him. He sees the warts and all, and he still loves him and wants to protect him in the way that a mother has seen the worst of her children and still loves them and wants to protect them. That's the kind of God that we have. My second point is we are pursued by God. So if you think the omniscience of God is pretty powerful, and it is, God knows all about you, Look at the omnipresence of God. In verse 7 and following, it says this: where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even in darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. He asked the question, where can I flee? Anybody, the way that he does this in a poetic fashion is to ask two rhetorical questions. Where can I flee from your spirit? Where can I hide? And the answer, as John's already pointed out, nowhere. God is omnipresent. He is everywhere. And then what he'll do is he'll give hypothetical situations. If I go to the heavens or to the deep, if I go to where the rise of the dawn or where the sun sits, or if I go to the darkness, God is everywhere. You can't hide from it. So I began to question, why is it that David would come to this knowledge that God knows him completely and want to run from that? Anybody understand David's impulse? To want to run from a God that knows it all? To want to hide yourself? Well, I mean, you guys wouldn't want it makes yourself, to make yourself that vulnerable to people. I mean, that's dangerous, right? That seems dangerous, to open yourself up so completely that they know it all. We fear that. And so David's first impulse might be to consider running away. Where can I go to get away from this? So that's the impulse it might give you, is it's either going to comfort you or it's going to frighten you. I would say if it's a source of comfort, then you've had a mom or somebody in your life that has shown you that they can know you and still love you. And if it's a source of fear for you, then maybe you've only experienced relationships in your life that have caused you to be genuinely afraid of somebody who truly knows you. But the love of God is something we can find comfort in. We don't have to hide from, although David tries. And so that's why the point is that he pursues us. We are pursued by God. How many moms wish that I don't have to say moms wish. I know moms do this, right? When their kids are starting to run away, is there any place a mom wouldn't go to protect them? Any highs, anything too high, anything too low that a mom wouldn't do to protect her children? The poetic opposites are high and low. So he does say that. He says, if I go to the heavens, that's as high as you can get. Is God there? Everybody say yes, God's there. If I go to the depths, is God there? Yes. There's no place too high that God can't be, and no place too low that God can't be. What about this one? If I rise on the wings of the dawn, think of the sun rising in the east. If I settle on the far side of the sea, think of the sun maybe settling on the far side in the west. Is God there? Yes. And there's no place you can't hide. I think, again, moms might wish that they had this kind of presence, but only God is omnipresent. And so she can't protect him all the time, but God can. So a mom who trusts God to do this is something that I think is very valuable. Even in physical places, there's the metaphor of dark and light, that you can't hide from that either, right? He says, surely, verse 11, surely darkness will hide me. But when you hide in the dark, right, spiritual darkness, your darkest place, can God access you there? Yes, of course. Because when God steps into the scene, darkness turns to light. That's what happens when God. So I don't know what people are going through or whether or not you're hiding from God. There's no place you can. In the darkest moments of life, God can step into it and illuminate it. Make it light. The light shined in the darkness, but the darkness did not overcome it. Whatever dark places you are in, when God steps into that, it becomes light to him. How do you feel about that? I have a third point. I actually have 5 points tonight. You think we're going to get through them? Probably not, but I have a third point. My third point is that we are fashioned by God. And I guess you can see the obvious connection here, because God is working in partnership with mothers to bring little tiny humans, people, into our our world, right? We are fashioned by God. But there's if you look at Psalm, it begins to you begin to wonder, well, why is it that God knows us so well? Why is it that he pursues us so hard? Last week we looked at a psalm that said Jesus is sitting at the right hand of God and ruling and reigning from heaven. How is it that God, who rules and reigns from heaven, cares so much about you? Why? And it's all in this word in verse 13. Verse 13. And the first word that starts out the sentence tells us why God cares for us, why he pursues us. It says for, or it could be because. He knows us and he cares for us because he created us in my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. He gives us the reason why God cares. Because he made you. He created you. He worked in partnership with your mother to knit you together. Isn't that like, I like this image. I've been thinking about all week of like God just knitting together like DNA strains, like, inside our mother's womb, just knitting us together. I don't know if that's really how it worked. It's poetic language, of course, right? So we're not talking literal. God is working in partnership with moms to bring people into the planet. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. And it gives us the reason why God loves us so much. He's invested in you. He created you. He knit you together. I know this has to be true for moms because I've gone through we've had 2 pregnancies and 2 children, and a beautiful thing. I remember waiting 10 weeks before you tell anybody, right? Don't tell anybody until 10 weeks is up. I remember the first kicks. How could you have, I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine what it would have felt like for mom to feel her child kick the first time inside of her belly. But gosh, I'm sure she falls in love with it with every kick. Even the ones that happen in the middle of the night when they're trying to sleep, right? And it's rolled up underneath their rib cage and it's, think it's Mike Tyson or something, right? Still, the mom is just like, I love you so much, right? I remember cravings, morning sickness, all those things. A mom is creating this person, and God is creating this person inside the mother's womb. And how could you help but love that child? To love it in just such an amazing way. You created that child. He created you unique and beautiful. Look what it goes on to say. It says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. God formed us. He knows us. He made you unique and beautiful. And because he created you, he can't forget you. Because he created you, he knows all about you. Because he created you, he's going to search for you in the darkest of places. Verse 15, my frame was not hidden from you. When I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. That's how much God knows, loves. He formed you, created you in your mother's womb. You're unique and beautiful, and God has a plan for you that's all written in his book. I think the way I think this relates to moms is for 2 reasons. First of all, they're partnering with God in that creation story, right? Like God, they are growing inside of them a child, and God has blessed and put them responsible for the child that's growing inside of their bodies, holding them accountable. But I think it also relates to moms, because how many moms have a plan for their kid's life? Not always the plan that their kid wants out of it, but they still have a plan for their kid's life, right? And they push their child in the directions. And I think God does that too, right? He's put a path in front of us. Choose the path that leads to life, not the one that leads to death. I'm going to move past some things just to give us the final challenge. And I won't be able to go through the whole psalm. So read it on your own. But look at verse 23. This is where we're going to end up, because there's a challenge to us. And so this is my last point, that we should open ourselves up to God. Now, again, if you read the psalm, all this stuff God already knows. Like, God's omniscient. He already knows you. He knows you completely before thought enters your mouth. He knows it. And God can pursue you anywhere, right? There's no place he can't go. To go to the darkness, he's there. Go to the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, God's there. And God is all like powerful. He created you, right? So these are things that we already know about God, but the challenge in this verse is that we actually open ourselves up to God. I actually saw this verse in a book called Dangerous Prayers, right? And it was a prayer that the author thought, if you really prayed this, this would be a dangerous prayer. Here's what it is. Search me, God, know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. It's a challenge to do exactly what we know God can already do. But can you imagine asking God to search you completely? Make yourself completely vulnerable to him. Know your heart, the center of who you are and what you think and how you know your heart. That makes you really vulnerable. How about this one? See my anxious thoughts. Search. He says, test me and see my anxious thoughts. Now, I might be okay with God knowing about my anxious thoughts, but testing them, I don't know if I feel so comfortable with that one, right? Test my anxious thoughts and then lead me in your way everlasting. It's a challenge to do exactly what the psalm tells us we should do. As I think about this psalm, it reminds me of my own mother, someone who dearly knows me, loves me dearly, will do whatever she can to pursue me. She'll protect me. That's my mom. It's the kind of person I married. My wife loves her kids more than she's such a self-sacrificing way. And it's the kind of moms I think God has called us to be. And when we see that in them,